HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Compassionate Connection, The Healing Power of Empathy and Mindful Listening by David Rakel, read by Stephen Bell Davies. Introduction. As human beings, we are born with an innate and nearly limitless capacity for caring and compassion. We recognize when others around us are hurting. As the latest neuroscience has shown, we quite literally feel their pain. Imaging studies have demonstrated that the same networks in the brain are activated whether people receive a painful stimulus themselves or are merely witnessing someone else receiving it. And we want to help. In fact, the human brain is actually wired for cooperation and giving. But we're not always good at it. We say the wrong things, or we zero in on the wrong problems. Often we manage to do more harm than good, causing hurt feelings and even damaging relationships. But there is another way. In The Compassionate Connection, The Healing Power of Empathy and Mindful Listening, I explain that we all have the astounding ability to help others in a way that prompts their healing from within and strengthens our bonds with them, while doing emotional and physical good for ourselves in the process. Indeed, social psychologists have theorized that giving may enhance the giver's self-interest more than receiving. This is a two-way street. As the founder and director of the University of Wisconsin's Integrative Medicine Program, and now professor and chair of the Department of Family and Community Medicine at the University of New Mexico, I have discovered that people become the most effective caregivers when they use the vital, yet surprisingly low-tech tool of human connection. A wide array of research now demonstrates that we humans can use our very presence to promote health in those who are ailing and guide them on a path toward recovery. My colleagues and I studied this connection in the primary care clinic at the University of Wisconsin Medical Center. We taught doctors to interact with patients using techniques of deep listening and empathy. We found that those who experienced a connection with their doctor recovered from the common cold a day faster than those who didn't. This wasn't just feel-good therapy. There was physiological evidence of the effect. Patients who felt a connection actually produced increased levels of disease-fighting immune cells. Making the connection involves particular skills everyone can learn and apply. Becoming present in the moment with another person, not an easy task in today's fast-paced, noisy world. And deep listening enable people to establish trusting relationships and exchange meaningful information. This kind of rapport allows helpers to bring their best to the service of others and may simply stack the deck in favor of healing. Indeed, studies have shown that the connection, once having been established, may also help address unhealthy eating habits, resistance to exercise, chronic health problems, the efficacy of cancer treatments, depression, and even the deleterious effects of premature birth. In this book, I draw upon my clinical experience and my own research, as well as 30 years of published studies in major medical journals in the fields of medicine, sociology, psychology, meditation, and neuroscience, to describe the effect of the human connection and the ways it can be used to boost health. I use examples from my years of practice to demonstrate the basis of each technique that makes the connection possible. As a practitioner of family, rural, and integrative medicine, I have encountered myriad hyphenated terms that seek to describe the mechanisms by which this discipline can have its greatest effect. A couple that come to mind are bio, psycho, social medicine, and psychoneuroimmunology, a relatively new multidisciplinary area that investigates how stress affects the nervous and immune systems. Each of these aims to express a simple concept that we may already understand intuitively. The mind and body are intertwined physiologically in ways that affect health, for better and for worse. Indeed, I have come to see that we can't treat one without treating the other. Moreover, it has been scientifically proved that a person's capacity to feel beauty and awe, and his or her ability to turn inward to find meaning and purpose, also improve health and well-being. This is a part of the mystery and the art of healing, that when aroused in others and coupled with science, leads to more positive outcomes. Not only does this happen within and throughout one human being, but also among human beings. Positive contagion can spread throughout communities, but before individuals can promote a more global connectedness to healing, they need to develop it within themselves. In Part 1 of The Compassionate Connection, I cover the power people possess to connect to others and make a difference in their lives. I delve into the importance of a compassionate connection for recovery and examine how it can enhance the placebo effect, or what I prefer to call the healing effect, a person's capacity for self-healing. We will look closely at the latest neurobiological research on the physiological underpinnings of the connection to gain an understanding of how and why it works, and we'll examine why it's necessary to recruit a patient's health from within, and how people bungle opportunities to help and consequently rupture the connection they're so ardently trying to make. In Part 2, I elucidate the tools that are necessary to create the connection. In order to truly be of service, helpers must know themselves and acknowledge their own biases before approaching another human being. Moreover, the mind's constant internal chatter or clutter can interfere with clearly seeing what another person actually needs. So we will examine how to set aside this clutter and be present. Because nonverbal communication can draw people closer, I will examine how we create connections with our bodies and facial expressions. Deep listening can help caregivers unearth another's authentic story, one that may not be evident on the surface of interactions. Caregiving can be exhausting, so I will focus on the sources of burnout and ways to avoid it that include the positive aspects of meditation. And finally, I will show you how to notice unexpected beauty in authenticity, even if it means fully facing suffering. In this process of connection, we gain clarity, creativity, wisdom, and even good health for ourselves. Serving with compassion. With the explosion of information technology, gadgets and equipment, and electronic record-keeping, tech is becoming increasingly prominent in our health delivery system. Soon, when we stand on the bathroom scale, all of our biomeasures will show up on the mirror or our smartphones. We will also be able to check our unique DNA profile to determine whether we metabolize one medicine better than another. But technology and big data algorithms, wonderful as they are, will never have insight or intuition. They will never understand how to facilitate healing within complex biological and emotional systems. This is a uniquely human talent. This book honors that human connection. Through it, caregivers can inspire others to have hope, resolve, and determination to make and stick with a health-oriented plan. The best part, however, is that the connection becomes a win-win situation for everyone. Even as it boosts health and enhances wellness, it strengthens relationships by removing judgment and deepening trust. It lessens caregivers' stress, reduces burnout, and improves resiliency. In fact, those who connect with others, whether as spouses, parents, friends, medical providers, co-workers, business leaders, or politicians, not only communicate better and become more helpful individuals, but also invariably experience a sense of gratification and even joy. Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen, author of Kitchen Table Wisdom, makes a great comparison between helping and serving. She suggests that when people help, they ask for something in return, as in, I have helped you, now what are you going to do for me? But when they serve, they also serve themselves, because in addressing the needs of another, they address their own. Indeed, in service, we all become part of a larger whole. In this way, the compassionate connection has the power to improve the quality of our lives and the lives of those around us. Part 1. Our Healing Power. Chapter 1. Compassion hastens healing. What kind of doctor do I need to be for this patient today? Michael Bayland, the doctor, his patient, and the illness. It was a routine Tuesday, and the clinic at the University of Wisconsin in Madison happened to be busy. I was part of a team of 9 physicians and 28 other health practitioners, and all combined, we saw about 325 patients a day. We faced time constraints for each visit, and we did our best to keep people from waiting too long. On this particular day, only 2 hours into the schedule, I was swamped. With a steady stream of patients ahead and multiple tasks still to address for those I'd just seen, the day already had the feel of an avalanche about to give way. Move efficiently, don't linger, had become the morning's mantra. In the first exam room, a woman in her mid-50s was waiting to see me about a pain in her shoulder that had been nagging her for 2 months. Walking down the hall, I began listing for myself the questions I would ask her, and mulling the range of tests she might need. Next door, a young man, a new patient to the clinic, was eager to have me look at an itchy, scaly rash that had surfaced on his arms and down his legs. I hoped, for the sake of time, it would be run-of-the-mill eczema that I could treat with a steroid cream. I paused at a computer to enter an electronic prescription for the patient I'd just seen, a shy teenager with a long history of asthma. When the clinic nurse informed me that the person waiting for me in exam room 3 was Martha, I felt my chest tighten. It wasn't personal. From the first time I'd treated Martha, more than 5 years earlier, I'd always liked her. She was a good-natured, rosy woman in her early 60s who had come from the same part of the country where I'd grown up, and we often chatted about the changes we'd faced and the regional dishes we'd each missed after moving to the Midwest. She and her family lived in one of the more affluent neighborhoods in town. I had met her husband, who had accompanied her to several appointments, and her son, who was now in graduate school. Martha and I had an easygoing rapport, which was fortunate because she tended to visit the clinic often. She just happened to be one of the more challenging medical cases in my practice. Martha's health issues were the type that don't fit easily into the typical 15-minute appointment. For several years, she had been suffering with rheumatoid arthritis, a complex autoimmune disease that occurs when the body's own immune cells attack the joints. The flare-ups cause swelling, joint disfigurement, and terrible pain. When we treat patients who have rheumatoid arthritis, we rarely rid the body of the disease, but merely knock it into remission by controlling the inflammation. Martha had been on several anti-inflammatory medications, including the steroid prednisone, which helped reduce the swelling, but also came with significant side effects like weight gain. In fact, she had put on so many pounds, her blood glucose was elevated, and she now needed to be on diabetes medication. The prednisone had also led to gastritis, an awful stomach irritation, so she was taking an acid-suppressing medication. On top of all that, the condition had severely affected her ability to cope with daily life and resulted in depression, so I put her on the antidepressant Prozac. At her last appointment, we had even added a sleeping aid to her medication regimen because she was having trouble staying asleep through the night. Prednisone, in particular, can trigger insomnia. This kaleidoscope of complex health problems is not as uncommon as one might think. Many people have medical conditions whose treatment leads to weight gain that then produces a surge of other diagnoses. Heart condition, diabetes, back pain, knee injuries, depression, and sleep apnea. Or they have syndromes, chronic pain, lupus, fibromyalgia, or inflammatory bowel disease. with mysterious causes that aren't fully understood, for which we can only address the symptoms. These days, a health issue might not be one isolated illness, but a complex tangle of disorders. When people have so many diagnoses, treating any one of them is like approaching a tower of stacked grapefruits in the produce aisle. You address one aspect of their condition, but then scramble to stop a cascade of others. Managing each problem as a separate entity results in multiple treatments and the risk of the person having to take a wide array of medications. This dangerous approach, an all too common occurrence, is called polypharmacy. The major concern of polypharmacy is that the medical community has no idea how all of these chemicals interact with one another. Indeed, one drug may even counteract another's reason for use, and the drugs can cancel each other out, as I'll explain more fully in Chapter 2. But perhaps more importantly, taking multiple medications like this greatly increases the risk of medical error, which has now been predicted to be the third leading cause of death in the United States, behind heart disease and cancer. How can caregivers evolve beyond the dangerous find-it-fix-it pharmaceutically dominated medical culture they live in? My primary care colleagues and I believe they can do this by developing insight into patients' unique lives to see how their conditions are often interrelated and not separate entities that require a pill for every ill. So, with all of these issues buzzing around in my mind, I braced myself as I entered the exam room where Martha was waiting. "Hey, Doc, I see you're running a little late," Martha said, in her jovial manner. I greeted her and asked her what had prompted today's appointment. She began to list her latest concerns. They weren't significantly different from the ones she'd had before, though each seemed to have become more onerous. Then she added a new symptom to the mix. With the pressure of time and the enormous complexity of her interlocking disorders and treatments, my mind reeled into a reactive mode. What's the new diagnosis? And what new medication does Martha now need? How will it interact with her other meds and create another layer of problems? Was she really going to be any better off after this visit? I meant to maintain my composure, but she must have seen a shadow of frustration dart across my face. It was hard to conceal that I was feeling angry with myself, and even a little annoyed with her. Here was an individual who needed something from me, but whose medical problems, all interconnected and seemingly snowballing, were becoming insurmountable. I didn't feel helpful in the least. In fact, I felt that I was failing. Each time she came back to see me, the new solution worsened her status. Was I supposed to send her off with an additional prescription that might present other side effects? On the one hand, I could treat the most recent symptom and deal with the fallout. On the other, I could encourage her to just live with it, which would leave her feeling as though she had come to me for no reason at all. My sense of powerlessness was devastating. One thing was clear to me. The problem was not Martha. Rather, it had to do with the focus I was supposed to give to the individual symptoms instead of the big picture of her health. I was expected to patch, but not to heal, even though what Martha needed was far more than stopgap fixes. How could it be, in this day and age, that with all my training and the time I had for the appointment, I could provide only piecemeal help? At that moment, I realized I wanted to change the way I engaged with all my patients. If I was going to help Martha and other people like her, I would have to learn to understand their disorders in a new way. In fact, to be effective and offer meaningful help, I had to find a way to get closer to the source of the illnesses. On being of service. In The Descent of Man, which was published 12 years after On the Origin of Species, Charles Darwin had argued that when it comes to human beings, the survival of the kindest is most important, not necessarily the survival of the fittest. He called sympathy the foundation stone of our social instincts. This question of how to be a helpful person, and even more importantly, how to be most helpful, has captivated me since childhood. Like most other kids, I first was taught that being helpful meant being kind. Share toys, give hugs, be respectful. All good advice. I wouldn't quibble for a second about the importance of treating other people kindly. As I grew older, however, I began to wonder whether there are more nuances in what we can offer as individuals. Kindness can go a long way, and the world we live in certainly needs plenty of it, but I also hoped the service I could provide wouldn't be just a fleeting gesture. I aspired to be caring in a way that could make a difference. For years, I was so gripped by the idea, I began to see the imperative everywhere. Give a man a fish, and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime, was a proverb that turned up in middle school on a wisp of paper and a fortune cookie, and stayed with me for a good long time. All of this got me thinking about how one person could be the vector for positive change in another. When I chose to become a family doctor 2 decades ago, I had soaring ambitions along those lines. I had grown up with great role models. My dad is a doctor. In fact, he's one of the founders of the field of family medicine. That began in 1969. For years I was awed by him and my mother, who worked as a nurse. What caught my attention even as a child was seeing their warm interactions with patients outside the office. People would greet them on the street with a bear hug, expressing empathetic gratitude, and often adding the most recent development in the personal story of their health, the story in which my parents had played a role. I witnessed remarkable tenderness in these moments, and an awareness that something important had transpired because of my parents' assistance. Their involvement had an enduring effect on me. That was what I wanted in a career, the opportunity to offer that magnitude of service, to be honored with the invitation to enter the intimacy of another person's life. Sure enough, being a family physician is a job that offers ample opportunity to do good. After residency, I became one of 2 family doctors in a 14-bed hospital in the small town of Driggs, Idaho. I felt awe and euphoria when, in a single day, I delivered a baby, treated a heart attack, placed a cast on a teenager's broken arm, and then supported someone who was suffering from depression. How amazing, and what a privilege it was to participate in such important moments in people's lives. The job put me in contact with patients of every age, from infancy to great-grandparenthood. As they came to see me over the years for regular checkups as well as illnesses, I got to know them for their individual personalities and for their connections in the community, not just for their health problems. I began to build those long-term relationships I had observed in my parents' careers, and to experience the warmth, really being of service to others, that is the heart and soul of the job. But the experience wasn't without a few bumps. Some people who came into my office left with the correct medication, but no greater health overall. We would have a pleasant interaction, and I would offer the best medical advice at my disposal, but little would change in their lives. That bothered me. The longer I practiced medicine, the more I began to pay attention to my interactions with my patients and to wonder about those situations that seemed less than fruitful. Even though a person might have gotten a solution to an immediate problem, I still wondered, could I have done more? Had I really made a difference for the man with chronic pain? Had I really gotten through to the woman with abnormally high blood sugar? The day-to-day experience of helping was one thing, but was I really doing the meaningful, enduring kind of good I had hoped to do? As I became interested in learning about other ways to influence health and healing, I moved on from Driggs. I had heard of a fellowship originated by Andrew Weil, M.D., at the University of Arizona, on teaching physicians about complementary therapies such as acupuncture and botanicals. At the time, those foundational health-influencing therapies, as well as nutrition and stress reduction through meditation and spirituality, were considered alternative and not mainstream approaches. But Dr. Weil had developed the new field of integrative medicine to stress the importance of incorporating the best of these modalities into our conventional systems of care. What is integrative medicine? According to the Academic Consortium of Integrative Medicine and Health, it reaffirms the importance of the relationship between practitioner and patient, focuses on the whole person, is informed by evidence, and makes use of all appropriate therapeutic and lifestyle approaches, healthcare and disciplines, to achieve optimal health and healing. Much of the information I had absorbed during my fellowship constellated around how to stimulate self-healing mechanisms within my patients' bodies. This is part of what I like to think of as the mystery and awe of medicine. I completed the 2-year fellowship and then moved my family to Madison to start an integrative medicine program at the University of Wisconsin, where I also continued a medical practice. Like the hospital in Driggs, the clinical care here also offers the opportunity for long-term relationships with patients. But I could also use some of my newly learned skills. Many of these came from self-reflective insight that was encouraged during my fellowship training. This helped me understand that there was more to this healing work than simply prescribing drugs, herbs, or a referral for body work. I learned the importance of the therapeutic ceremony and how the actual process of delivering care can dramatically enhance the effectiveness of what is prescribed. Research now shows how this is possible. That is, how personal interactions can actually have physiological effects on patients. As I will explain more fully in ensuing chapters, the mere presence of others can heighten a person's response to a treatment. For instance, a team led by neurophysiologist Luana Colloca at the University of Turin in Italy compared how people fared after surgery when they received pain medication in 2 distinct scenarios. For some, a nurse entered the room post-surgery and announced that the patient would be getting a powerful analgesic that would make the pain subside in a few minutes. A clinician then arrived and administered the treatment. For a second group, there was no announcement and no one to inject the drug. The patients received the same dose of medication by way of an IV injection from an automatic infusion machine and weren't even informed when the infusion was begun. Dr. Colloca found that patients receiving the drug by machine needed a 50% higher dose of painkiller than those who anticipated feeling better and received the drug from the nurse. In addition, 1 hour after treatment, patients on the drip described their pain as much higher than those who were given the drug by human hands. The expectancy created, we are going to give you a pain medication to help you feel more comfortable, and the actual presence of a person giving the medicine significantly enhanced the effect of the medicine. The lived experience is related to much more than just the intrinsic effect of the analgesic. Recent research has shown that positive expectations regarding pain reduces its severity by 28.4%, which is the equivalent of an average-size adult taking 8 milligrams of morphine. After comprehending more about the power of the interactive process, I started to ask myself fresh questions about how I could more effectively influence healing in another. Have I been patient enough? Have I been insightful about my patient's circumstances? Have I been imaginative about possible solutions? And then there have been cases like Martha's that have been so complex, I've wondered how a merely interactive process could ever contribute to improving such a challenging medical situation. Aloof or empathic? The prevailing wisdom in the medical literature for most of the 20th century asserted that doctors needed to keep their distance to maintain a position of emotional detachment from their patients. In 1912, Sir William Osler wrote in his famous essay, Aequanimitas, that doctors should neutralize their own emotions. That paradigm has held for decades. It was thought that physicians could study a patient's inner life by attaining cognitive clarity, a state of...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?